Ladies and gentlemen, there is no known official report of direct flight between Jamaica and Nigeria. There is no any official report that might suggest that there is any direct flight between Nigeria and Jamaica. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, some of you might have seen videos that might suggest otherwise or might suggest opposite to what I'm saying, but also please bear in mind that those people that are making those videos suggesting that there is direct flight, those are content creators. Those are content creators who might be wanting views, okay? But even if that was the case, it has not been made official. If something has not been made official, please take it as a pinch of salt. Why am I saying this? Because someone might believe those videos. You know, someone might be in Africa and this person wants to go to Jamaica. You know, when they go to Nigeria, they say, oh, I'll just go to Nigeria and connect from there. But when they reach Nigeria, oh my God, the truth is far. What they are saying is very far from the truth, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Now, of course, before direct route between Nigeria and Jamaica comes into play, I understand very well that there has been bilateral talks between these two countries. Okay. But nothing has been materialized yet. Okay. Yes, there has been discussion. There has been plans between Jamaican government and Nigerian government. And every forums, in every talks that they have. Yes, I am into full agreement that there has been bilateral talks between Nigeria and Jamaica into having a direct flight, and even at one point there was actually a seasonal flight that went from Nigeria to Jamaica, but that was seasonal. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please put that in mind. That was seasonal. No, it does not mean that is something that is actually happening to date. Okay, you might be very surprised. You might say, oh, let me go to Nigeria and connect to Jamaica straight away. Okay, you might be very, very surprised. So sometimes it's always good to get an official report. Yes, there has been bilateral talks. Okay, there has been plans between the Jamaican tourism ministry and the Nigerian tourism ministry or the Nigerian government, but those plans has not been materialized yet. Okay, those plans have not been implemented yet. There's always discussions after discussions. There's always discussion in each and every forum that might arise, but none of those discussions have ever come into play, ladies and gentlemen, until the day that both of these two countries are going to implement these plans. Ladies and gentlemen, they are going to actualize these plans. Then that's the day that we can actually say that there is direct flight between Nigeria and Jamaica. But as we speak right now, there was only discussions and the seasonal flight, and that was it, ladies and gentlemen. Another point that is making this direct flight seem so much hard, ladies and gentlemen, is airline profitability and risk aversions, ladies and gentlemen. At the end of the day, yes, Africans and Jamaicans are so much connected emotionally. Okay, Nigerians love Jamaicans, Jamaicans love Nigerians. Okay, but we must also put some things. We must also factor in some very important things like numbers. We need numbers to survive on this earth, ladies and gentlemen. We need profits to survive on this earth. We need to make money to survive on this earth. Okay, however how much rough it sounds, but it is a necessity. We need to make money to survive here on this earth, ladies and gentlemen. So if an airline is not making enough profit, or if an airline suspects that it's not going to make or amass enough profits through the sale of air tickets, then there will be no need of putting upfront direct route. There will be no need, ladies and gentlemen. And also, if the same airline in between those two countries suspect that they are fully dependent on the diaspora, they are not going to go upfront with it, ladies and gentlemen. Another thing is now, ladies and gentlemen, traveling to Jamaica from Africa is very expensive. It's very expensive. High ticket cost, ladies and gentlemen. It's very, very expensive. Now, if it's even more expensive when you are putting into play a direct flight, because there's a lot of maintenance that needs to be done. There's a lot of expansion of the airport that needs to be done. There must also be a higher demand of something either in between these two countries that will actually push for both of these two countries to have a direct flight, ladies and gentlemen. If there's a low trade turnout in between those two countries, if they are not trading them between them, itself so much, then it will not be, it will not be easy to maintain direct flight. It will not be easy, ladies and gentlemen, because there's high ticket cost, high maintenance, expansions of airports, remodeling of these airports. All of these require a lot of money. Okay. Another thing is, it's also very hard for Jamaicans to, for Africans to actually even go to Jamaica. Okay, it's very expensive. The air ticket is very expensive alone. Air ticket alone is very expensive. So most of the times we are required to have even an inter-transit visa. Most of us are required to have, as we speak right now, as we speak, I as a Kenyan who wants to go to Jamaica, I will be required to have an inter-transit visa. Inter-transit visa. Additionally, I'll also be required to have at least some amount of money in my bank account, in addition to the flight ticket that I also need to have, ladies and gentlemen. So you see, it's not an easy thing. It's not an easy journey. It's not something that you plan today. You wake up and you say, tomorrow I'm going to Jamaica. Unless you're very rich. If you're very rich, super rich, you're a diplomat, that is possible. Well, another issue is Caribbean airlines and African airlines must make unnecessary stopovers within Europe before changing routes, ladies and gentlemen. That means they are still dominated by the colonial systems. They are still dominated by the colonial systems, ladies and gentlemen. And if there is any change of plans, again, they must also involve these same colonial systems, ladies and gentlemen. That means even if there is ever going to be a direct flight between Caribbean and Africa, one way or the other, Europe must be involved. Yes, Europe must be involved in these plans. They must also make their own contributions in these plans, ladies and gentlemen. That's the way it is. That's the way it is. Another thing that I've also find it an issue, though it might look like it's no issue, but it's still an issue, is payment. Okay, payment and change of currency bureaucracy. That is also a big issue, ladies and gentlemen. For most Africans, they find it very difficult. It's very difficult for most Africans to change currency. Okay, it's a challenging process. And also payment, sometimes they will make payment using Visa card, and this Visa card, most times it will get rejected. This Visa card, they will get some restrictions. There are places that they cannot use, say, this same Visa card, ladies and gentlemen. So you see, it might look like it's no issue, but it's also an issue that is also causing, that might also prevent this direct flight, ladies and gentlemen. Another issue is, for a direct flight to happen, there must be some serious government involvement. Yes, there must be some serious government involvement, like what happened between CARICOM and Ethiopia. You see, like what happened between CARICOM and Ethiopia, there was government involvement. There was some signing of treaties there. So it's not a small thing. It's not a small matter. Okay. And I've just talked about operational cost. The operational cost for this to happen is, it will cost billions for both of these two countries, ladies and gentlemen. Yep. Another problem is there is no enough, diaspora pressure to push for this direct flight between both of these two countries. If there is initiatives out there, okay, if there are groups out there that will lobby, or that will also push and make sure that there is actually direct flight between Caribbean and Africa, then in one way or the other, this can also contribute. This can also contribute to this direct flight, ladies and gentlemen. But either way, in one way or the other, and I strongly believe that someday, one way or the other, there will be a direct flight between Africa and Caribbean. Okay, we are going to have serious trade relationship, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to visit each other without making unnecessary stopovers. That is one thing. That's my strong belief, ladies and gentlemen. Now, anyway, Actually, I did not even introduce myself. My name is Real Marcos, and yes, I make Jamaican videos. I make African, Jamaican, or generally speaking, Caribbean and African videos. Ladies and gentlemen, if these are your kind of videos, if these are your type of videos that you want to see in your feed, please subscribe and share this content. Actually, 2 days ago, because let me say it because I have actually remembered it. 2 days ago, I made a video about Jamaican and how Jamaicans stay solid, and Africans sometimes they are so separated by tribe, ladies and gentlemen. But I forgot to mention some of the things. And there's one Jamaican who actually came to my comment section and reminded me about classism, colorism. These are some of the problems, or these are some of the factors that might try to separate Jamaicans, even though to date it may not be as pronounced as long time, but it's still a contributing factor, ladies and gentlemen. Something like colorism is really bad. Colorism is really bad. Why? Because it's actually coming from your own people. Discriminating another human being because this person has a different shade of color, and in your own mind you believe now because this person has a different shade of color, I am more superior than this person. That is very bad. That is so bad. We are one. For something like classism, even Kenya there is classism, but it is not as pronounced. But for classism, at least you can change your situation. Okay, from a lower class, middle class to a higher class, you can change your situation. But for something like colorism, you cannot change your situation. There is no reason why a human being should discriminate another human being based on color. It is not good, and it is even worse because it is coming from even people who have been victims of racism. Ladies and gentlemen, it is even coming from your own people. It is worse. It hurts the most. It hurts the most when it's coming from your own people. Ladies and gentlemen, imagine getting discriminated by your own people based on colorism. That's the worst. That's the worst kind of. I consider that as the worst kind of separation, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, thank you so much for the add-ons. Thank you so much for the corrections. We come here to learn at the end of the day. Let's agree to disagree in the comment section below, ladies and gentlemen. And that's amazing thing. Okay, yes, I might come here and, spread out information. Some things might be incorrect. Okay, some things might be incorrect. Let me not say that I am perfect. Some things might be incorrect. So if there are things that are incorrect, please correct me in the comment section below. Okay? Anyway, thank you so much for watching up to this point. And share, subscribe, and see you again in my next YouTube video.